Hello there, welcome to the start of another writing vlog. It feels like it's been so long for me because I just got back from 2 months of traveling. Last time I did any kind of writing vlog, I was sitting right here in the same spot preparing to leave. So at the end of April, I left to go on a trip to Utah to go camping. Got back in mid-May, not to here though, to my mom's place. 2 days after that, I left to go to Europe for like 5 or 6 weeks. The reason there was only 2 days in between is because I was flying to Europe for a work retreat. I did not have control over the dates. I otherwise would not put a 6-week trip 2 days after a 10-day camping trip. But you know, sometimes the flight is free. I went to Portugal for that work retreat, then I went to go stay with a friend in Denmark for a couple weeks. I met up with my roommates, we went to Scotland, we went to Greece. Now I am back. I got back about a week and a half ago. I hadn't been home in 2 months. I've been sick for like a month because I got sick while I was in Denmark with I don't know what. Something that's going around Europe. It wasn't COVID. I got a PCR done. I really thought it was COVID. That was the worst, and I think because I was traveling and I was so not really resting, it really lingered. I'm finally better. I'm still a little nasally, if you can hear. The main task and what I'm going to be covering in this video is I'm going to be starting the edits on my novel. I almost said the new title. I'm calling it Saltbirds on this channel, but I've changed the title. My first step going into the edits is going to be to just read it over. This is normally not my first step when I edit a book. Normally, I would start by compiling all the edits I want to make and making a revision map and doing like a big edit. But the past 2 books that I wrote, where I kind of developed that revision process, I wrote them a bit more slowly, and I really was doing a lot of editing as I wrote. In this case, I just wasn't feeling like I needed to edit the book as I wrote it like I typically would. I kind of was just in a flow. I just wanted to finish the book. It's very character and relationship driven, and I felt like I really just wanted to see these character relationship arcs through to the end because, you know, they were continually revealing themselves, and a lot of things kept being revealed to me as I was writing. These characters have come to life in my mind, and I can just let them act on the page, learn about them as I write. And so for that reason, it felt kind of pointless to stop and edit and A, disrupt this beautiful flow state that I had, and B, maybe not me making fully informed edits. I was still learning about the characters as I wrote in very exciting ways. Because of that, I haven't really read the book. You know, normally I'm constantly rereading and editing and like tinkering with my books while I write them, but I didn't do that for this book except for like the beginning section. I do have some ideas of changes I want to make, you know, problem areas in the book. There's a few things that I can think of. You know, my book is in 6 arcs, so I'm probably going to reference, you know, arc 1, arc 2. Arc 2 is the worst. It's the messiest. I was having major problems with the book at that point. After that, it was like really easy, very smooth sailing to the end. Arc 2 is kind of a mess, and I think it's very bloated. There's a lot in there that just doesn't need to be there, which is typical of me. If I'm struggling, I overwrite. I can't get anything to work, and so I just write a bunch of extraneous scenes that aren't doing anything, trying to get something to work. I have ideas on changes I want to make, but at the same time, I feel like I don't have a solid grasp of the book and like what the issues might be and what changes I want to make and how it all fits and flows together because I haven't read it. So that's what my first step before I start going in to do any big changes is I'm just going to read it. Take notes as I'm reading it, get a sense of what changes I might like to make to the book, because then I can go in and do my big edit, the big developmental edit, which I'm excited to do. I'm really excited to edit this book. I've really come around with editing. I used to hate it. I started to really, I actually quite enjoy it now. So, oh, there's a butterfly. Oh, that's a beautiful butterfly. Stay focused, Shaylin. I think for me, just reading my work can be very illuminating for just identifying things that don't work. Because I haven't really read it back, I almost will get to experience it kind of for the first time in a sense. Because I think when I'm writing, you get into a bit of a trance sometimes. I'm not really thinking consciously about the words I'm writing. It's just happening, you know? Like you can connect to the voice of the narrator and kind of just embody that voice, and then it's effortless, right? And because it's not really coming from any kind of conscious thought, I'm not consciously thinking, how do I phrase this? The voice of the narrator is there, I'm tapped into it, and the story is just playing. Very effortless when it works, and a lot of this book, especially later on, it was very effortless, and it was that flow state. I didn't have to think about it consciously, it was just there. After having written something in that state, I really have no memory of what I wrote. It was just emerging. How the actual scenes are written, phrased, framed, I don't actually really remember for most of them because I wrote them in a little fever dream, and then I haven't looked at them since. Finish my walk and then go finish my work day. I'm back at the park to film another update. I'm on my little evening walk. It's like 8:30. We're having a very dramatic sunset, though unfortunately I think that it's dramatic because of smoke. I had a bit of a slow start getting into the edits. Hard for me to turn off that instinct to edit, and so I can't remember what day it was that I edited the first chapter, and I edited it. I didn't just read it, and I was like, oh, okay, at this rate, this isn't going to be read through. This is just going to be an editing draft. Chapter 2 also took a while to read, not as long. I read the first 2 chapters a lot of times, like many times, and I've edited them many times. I think I was at the point in the development of those chapters where it was actually time to start doing some bigger edits. Today, I was at chapter 3, read over chapters 3, 4, and 5, and it went much quicker, and I really didn't stop to tweak things. You know, I'm on part 2 of the book now, because part 2 starts at chapters 4 through 7. That's my least favorite part of the book. I was really struggling with writing it, and I think what I don't like in a lot of these chapters is I just don't like how the chapters and the scenes flow together and how they fit together. It just feels very awkward in a lot of places. I'm actually really pleased with a lot of the changes that, just while reading over the chapters, became clear, things that I had never thought of before that feel like it will be very impactful when I actually go to implement them. Because right now, basically, as I write, I'm just kind of taking notes. What will happen next is I'll start translating that to like specific changes that I want to make, scene by scene by scene. I'm excited to get past the part of the book that I hate, which is part 2. I don't think it's as bad as it was in my mind. So I think my biggest worry going into at least this section of the book was, what if I can't identify what I need to do? But a lot of things have been jumping out to me as changes I can make. You know, it's like a puzzle. On each draft, I feel like I just start putting pieces in place, and then the next pieces that need to be put in place for the next draft become clear, and eventually, hopefully, you finish the goddamn puzzle. Oh, I found a place that I can rest my phone. This is great. So I wanted to talk through one of the changes that I thought of. I think it's a really good example of subtle changes in how events link together and play out, and how you set up an event can really increase the tension. So in the book, the main character, their name is Rowan, and the story is primarily set at their sister-in-law's family's summer home. The main character is living there over the summer with their brother, his wife, and her dad. And the main relationship of the book that we're exploring is the relationship between the main character Rowan and their sister-in-law Susanna. Susanna's parents divorced when she was like 2. Mom went on to have another kid who is the same age as Rowan. Mom is never present in the book, but we're really in Suze's life. Her and Suze's dad are having a property dispute over the house. The brother, his name is Elliot, is staying in a trailer on the property over the summer. And he and Rowan also have a relationship, which is messy, as you can imagine. This is his introduction, basically. We're introducing this character, and originally he's first mentioned when brother Cody actually mentions it and says like, oh yeah, Elliot is Suze's brother on the property. After that, Rowan goes over and talks to him. I think I could have a more compelling scene where Rowan sees Elliot just from afar, like from the window, actually observes him and is interested. Who is this person? Why is he there? And goes over. Why would they tell Rowan? Rowan is a little troublemaker. Everyone knows that they're a little troublemaker. Why would they tell them about Elliot? I think it would be way more interesting if Rowan just takes the initiative to go over to talk to Elliot themselves and forges this connection with Elliot, not just against the wishes of their family, because obviously it's against the wishes, but completely against their knowledge. Earlier I was saying I didn't like how a lot of the scenes, like the events, the general events that happen have to happen. You know, we're talking characters being introduced, like I have to introduce these characters, but I didn't always like how things linked together. Just those mini causal chains, like the overall causal chain of the whole book, fine, but the mini causal chains linking beats within scenes or a few little scenes together, I often am not happy with. Some adjustments in how we get to this point of introducing Elliot that I think really increase the tension among this whole family unit, which ultimately that's what I'm looking for in this book, is ways to maximize the tension within this family unit, because that's the most entertaining part of the book, is seeing all the really messy tensions in this family unit and watching it completely blow up. That's why I set the book where I set it. I wanted to set it in a place that was very idyllic, right? It's a summer home on the waterfront. I wanted to set it in this family, their paradise, right? It's one of those things that I was reading the scene with Cody introducing Elliot, and I'm like, why would he bring this up, right? Like, I think that's another thing. Cody was a tricky character. I think a lot of it in the early section of the book, his motivations are not very well handled, because I hadn't really grasped him yet as a character. Looking back on some of these early scenes, I'm like, that is not in character for him. Like, he would not give this information up to his troublemaker sibling. Like, I didn't realize until having written the whole book that it's out of character for Cody, because at that time I hadn't really developed his character well enough. but now it's really obvious that it's just not an in-character decision. That's just one of the changes that jumped out that I want to make. Welcome to my kitchen. I feel like you guys never really see the kitchen. Probably really loud because we're having a bit of a heat wave, and so there's like 4 fans going. I'm making a sushi bowl. It's gonna have like tofu and cucumber and avocado and oyster mushrooms. Then I'm gonna do like teriyaki. The progress on the book is fine. I finished part 2, so I'm on to part 3 now. This is kind of the point in the book I was excited to get to, because everything prior to this, like part 1 I had read just like a lot of times, to be honest. And then part 2 I don't like. Part 3 I feel like is where it gets juicy. The book started to click. I really like the writing that I was producing from that point onwards. And I just feel like the plot starts to get really juicy, honestly. Tomorrow I'm also pretty busy because I work tomorrow. And then I'm going climbing right after work, but maybe in the evening I'll have a little bit of time. I'm going climbing tomorrow, and I'm also on Friday, I'm actually taking my lead course. I mostly do top rope, that's my preference. I have bouldered a few times. I'm learning how to lead climb on Friday, but it's one reason why I'm climbing quite a lot this week, because I have to practice clipping in before my lead course. So that's where I'm at. Busier week than I was expecting. I don't think it's going to be a very busy weekend. I was planning on going to Pride this weekend, but I think everyone that I was going to go with is out of town. That is kind of where I'm at with climbing, with my editing, with my sushi bowl, and various other things.
Everybody say hi to Neffy. Leave a comment saying that she's the most beautiful, prettiest girl. We're only complimenting her appearance because, to be honest, she doesn't really have any other redeeming qualities. Not the best personality, not gonna lie. I love her for it. I accept her and all of her meanness. Because of that, Effie, I'm just gonna say you're getting by on good looks. And then there's Toby, the most perfect boy in the world. He's never done anything wrong.
Hello there. So where are we at? I had big plans for today. I had a lot of stuff I wanted to get done today. I think I've gotten up to chapter 12 in my read-through. There's, I think, 21 chapters. I have, I think, around 100 pages left in the book, and it's in my Word doc, it's 240 pages. I think I've really gotten into a good stride with reading it. I had big plans for things I wanted to do today. I wanted to film a video. I wanted to do a significant amount of work on that draft. Oh, today I'm just a little beat up today. I took my lead climbing course yesterday in the evening, which was like 3 hours long. And lead is hard. Oh my god, like we were practicing on really easy routes, like 5-7s, like some of the easiest routes in the gym. I was like, wow, 5-7s never felt so difficult. I was away for 2 months, so I didn't climb. I climbed once outdoors, but really it had been like basically 2 months since I'd climbed, and then I was sick for like a month, and so I think my endurance is like really wiped out. I thought that I would have climbed more times after getting back from my trip and doing this course, but I only climbed twice. The course was more intensive in terms of the climbing aspect than I was expecting. I thought that it would be a lot more like, you know, being taught safety, but most of it was just kind of, which makes sense. I don't know why I didn't expect this. Most of it was just like repetition. It was a course that you do in pairs, so, you know, you and your partner just doing as many reps, practice on and off, practicing belaying and lead climbing, and then we did the last hour was just practicing falls. Pretty exhausted, and then on top of that, I did not sleep at all. I could not get to sleep until like 5:30 in the morning. But let's just be real, because I had really bad cramps. It's not something that in my real life I would ever be embarrassed. Like, that's an involuntary to do anything about the fact that I have cramps. I have a significant amount of resident channel creeps who like to send me really creepy DMs and leave me really creepy comments, and so just acknowledging that I have a uterus feels like I shouldn't say that in the presence of our resident channel creeps. You know what? I do have one. I am in possession of one, and sometimes, if anyone who has one knows, they can be painful. I'm not feeling great today. So I don't know, I wanted to film a video today, but I think the video I wanted to film is more mentally intensive. I just don't know if I'm gonna have time to do it tomorrow, because I do have plans tomorrow. I'm just meeting up with a friend who is in town, who is actually like a childhood friend of mine. Like, we've been friends literally since kindergarten, but I just don't see her too often because we don't live in the same city. You know, I'd like to read a few chapters of the book. I'm really enjoying the process of reading it over. I feel like I'm getting a really good sense for how it reads as a whole, how it flows as a whole, and changes I want to make are becoming clear. That was the whole reason of doing this, right? Was to get a sense for the changes I wanted to make when I started actually editing the book. Normally when I finish a first draft, I'm like, these are the things that need work. But I didn't really know in this case because I hadn't been reading the book over. And so it was a case where I was like, I know it needs work, but I don't really know exactly how, where, or what. But I think I'm really getting a good sense of the changes that I want to make. And so I think I can go into the next draft really focused, with a really focused plan on some really concrete things that I want to fix. What am I gonna get done today? I don't know, because I'm all out of it. The next day, when I get back from my walk, I have some emails to answer, and I'm also going to try and read a couple chapters. Yesterday, I ended up not working on the book at all. I didn't do anything. It was one of those days where I had slept so poorly that I had no brain power whatsoever. After I had filmed the clip yesterday, I literally immediately after that had a 2-hour nap and then woke up at 7 in the evening. It was extremely disoriented. I looked at my clock and I was like, oh my god, it's 7 a.m. the next morning. I'd like to get through maybe like 3 chapters, or however many chapters I have left in the part would be good. I don't really remember exactly where I am in the book. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I can do this edit at whatever pace I like. This would be my, assuming all goes according to plan, my 3rd published novel. My 1st is currently on submission. My agent, I've delivered my 2nd. So I'm 2 books ahead. So I really don't have to rush at all with this, but I just wanted to get to the edits quicker. Like with Holy to Ghost, it took me a while to get into editing the book after I finished the first draft because so many other things on the go, like with Honey Vinegar. I really didn't want to leave it so late. I was really excited to get into the edits. I really just wanted to do that like as soon as possible. Wow, I'm at the point, this delicate point where I don't have any work to do on Honey Vinegar or Holding a Ghost because both of them are now in publishing limbo. Something could happen, but currently nothing is happening with the book, means that I have time to work on other things. And so I'd really like to just focus on Saltbirds and getting the edits done while I'm in publishing limbo on other books. Really no rush. I've just been trying to get through the first read through relatively quickly, just for the sake of immersion, just for the sake of reading the book kind of all in one go to get a sense for how it reads as a whole. So I ended up actually getting until the end of part 5 yesterday, so I only have part 6 left and it's not very long. I think it's like 35 pages. As I've been getting later into the book, you can tell that it's a first draft. Normally my first draft, I wouldn't say read like first drafts because they're not really first drafts because I pick at them, right? I add things and I adjust and I line edit like constantly all the time. So my first drafts never really get the chance to be first drafts because I edit them a lot. But in this case, I wasn't really doing that. You can tell it's a first draft, not because it's bad, but I think it just feels a bit rushed and underdeveloped. The general trend that I've noticed throughout the first half, there's more extraneous stuff that I need to cut. And in the second half, I feel like there's a lot of missed potential in terms of stuff that's just currently underdeveloped and needs to be worked through more fully. You know, at the beginning I was editing a lot more and now I've really resigned to just reading it, and every once in a while I do make little edits if they're obvious and quick, and otherwise I've just been leaving notes for myself, highlighting stuff that I know I want to come back to, but trying to just get through it quickly because that is the purpose. I've really gotten a sense of everything that's wrong with the book and that needs work, and so now it's starting to bother me and I'm like, I need to edit this. I'm doing another park update because too much sawing happening at my house, and also now that I've found that there's like a place I can rest my phone while like as a little tripod, I've gotten into the stage of planning my edits where I'm actually planning the edits now. This is a really important part of developmental editing for me. When I did this for Honey Vinegar, it literally took months. Don't think it's gonna take as long this time. Basically where I take all the notes that I have. While I was doing my read through, end of each chapter just wrote a paragraph of things that I feel aren't working, need more attention. I also was especially on the lookout for noting places that I could easily insert a flashback because I know that this book needs more backstory. I love a lot of the backstory in the book. You know, a lot of what I wrote in the first draft turned out great, that it's still lacking in some places. I think it needs more flashback. The fictive present is relatively narrow. It's like just a few months, it's just one summer. Character has such a weird upbringing and so many bizarre relationships. And going into actually organizing my edits, this is where I take all those thoughts and I start making an outline for the revision. So I have an evolving outline that I was making as I drafted, which was just like a list of every chapter and every scene. Anytime I want to make a change or revisit a scene, I add a note, starting by just looking at the notes I'd taken and applying the changes, you know, just actually making notes in my evolving outline of what changes need to happen to specific scenes, really solidifying the backstory arcs and making sure that that's all optimal. There's a wasp. And so I kind of had this thought near the end. My backstory I felt was a bit haphazard with some of the placement. I was like, oh, I have a simple way that I can structure this. One arc of backstory for each arc of the book, except the last one. But the first 5 arcs, first thing I have to do is basically reorder the backstory, which was a little tricky. So what I did was I went through my evolving outline and I just bolded every flashback so I could clearly see all the flashbacks. And then I highlighted each thread of backstory. So the threads of backstory I was working with was Rowan's relationship with their best friend, Rowan's romantic history / queerness, and I grouped those together as one, Rowan's relationship with their brother, relationship with their parents, and relationship with like their pyromania. I highlighted one in each color. Obviously the pyromania was red, had a chart of all the flashbacks in each part, and so I could see really clearly where the flashbacks were placed, and then I copied that chart and started rearranging them. But this made me realize that my vision of one clean arc per part doesn't work, because some of the scenes needed to be moved, some of them were also immovable. Like some of them had to be placed in specific points and in a specific order. These were the scenes where I did backstory correct, and the backstory was a needed component of the causal chain and has to go in that location. So I realized it can't be as clean as one theme of backstory, one arc of backstory per each part. I was able to then, from that, start rearranging the backstory so that it is still in like general arcs throughout the book that don't always align exactly with the parts. We get actual arcs of backstory rather than just what feels like random flashbacks that are like kind of splattered throughout the book. So that was a bit mind-bendy and it required like a lot of shuffling, but overall it took a few hours, and then, you know, I started actually applying that to my evolving outline and making notes of where new scenes needed to be and what needed to change, and I started going in with some other notes that I had taken for each chapter and just building my evolving outline. And I think that will just take a few days. When I did this for Honey Vinegar, it was too in-depth. I was really overwhelmed going into my first developmental edit for Honey Vinegar. I had never done such big developmental edits. Felt like I had to cross every T, dot every I, right? Like I treated this almost like it was the only draft I was ever gonna do. And then with Holding a Ghost, I learned, I was like, that was way too intense. Like, it takes multiple drafts to get everything in place. So instead of trying to do everything possible on this one draft and making that draft so hard, chill, fix what you can. But I was a little too relaxed in that case because I really didn't think through what I needed to actually fix when I was planning the edits, and I would kind of just write like vague edits in points where like I knew something needed to be fixed but not how to fix it. Learned like you have to actually think about the solution in this phase. You can't just be like, there's a problem here, fix it later. Like how, right? I've kind of learned, don't freak out, don't feel like you have to fix literally everything. It falls into place, right? You fix some things and then more things fall into place the more that you fix. But also, don't leave these vague edits where you know you have to work on something but you don't know how, and so you just kind of like are like, fix it. Other than that, I'm kind of treating myself a little. You know, I know these edits are going to be a big task, and so I kind of, before I started diving into them, I gave myself a little writing trait, which was that I kind of let myself start experimenting with writing the first chapter of my new fantasy book, which is called Godship. And this is not my personal project. I would like to publish this book. Not that I want to start it now because I have other like Saltbirds edits, so it's not really like on my mind. Typically when I get an idea for a book, I like to very early on write the first chapter or two, because when I actively start writing something, that's when the voice really clicks for me. And when the voice really clicks, that's really helps my brainstorming. When I can just hear the voice in my head, lines, passages, chapters, scenes will just come to me. And that's really how I develop work when I'm away from the actual work, right? And so it's really important for me in the pre-writing stage. I always write the first few chapters in the pre-writing stage to really cement and figure out that voice so I can hear the voice, and then it just really opens the brainstorming gates, really. I just wrote the first scene last night because I really want to kind of connect with the voice, especially because there are kind of two POVs in this book. I really haven't talked about the book, but it's fantasy, exciting. It has two POVs, which I normally hate dual first person, but I kind of had to in this case. I'll just say I hate dual POV first person. It's just something that I have a personal, not to my taste, and I think it's because it feels too manufactured. It breaks the immersion of what first person is, which is like the form of the book being contained within the main character's mind, it makes it feel manufactured and authorial to me, and so that's why I don't like it. It's just unnatural. I do not like it for that reason. If you like it, you do you. But as I was developing this book, it has a romance that's really central to it. All my like fantasy ideas that I have that are in this world, all of them are just sapphic fantasy romances. And so there's a romance that's very central to the book. I realized that the way I developed this relationship, you need both of their perspectives, because the fun and the tension of it is in this discrepancy between what they know and what they think the other person knows. That's the whole root of the tension, and it's really fun. I think it's gonna be a really fun relationship, and I've really fallen in love with the characters and their romance. And you know, I used to hate writing romance when I was a teenager. I would reluctantly put it in my books, and anytime I would put it in my books, it would always end tragically. Like one of them would die, they would never end up together. I always hated writing romance. And then I realized that if I just wrote about lesbians, then I would enjoy writing romance, which made a lot of sense. Now that I've realized that I could just write sapphic romance, I love it. And so I especially really enjoy, I think, writing romance in a fantasy context and just playing with unique tensions and different relationship setups that we wouldn't have in our world. And so this first one, I've really fallen in love with the romance and both of the characters. I realized that they both need POVs, and so one of them, the main character, her name's Aislif, is telling the story from like a typical first-person retrospective, and then the love interest, her name's Eva. Her POV is a bit more minimal, but hers is epistolary, so we're getting her journal entries. It kind of works her POV into the form. Made it work in a way that I could justify the dual POV. You know, I do want to really think about how I'm going to create the voices in this world, and I have a lot of questions for myself around how I'm going to create the voices in this world in a way where the voice does some world building. You know, especially for the epistolary POV, I kind of know that it's a journal, so there's probably going to be some shorthand. And the other main character, it's just a first-person narrative from her, she speaks like a dialect of the language that the other characters speak. How much do you lean into the otherworldliness of the voice? How do you do that? How do you world build through voice? These are all questions that I have for myself. It's kind of just like a little something that I'm treating myself with while I'm in the outlining the edits phase. Yeah, that's basically all. Hello there. I'm going to end this vlog today because, well, right now, not just today, in this moment, I haven't finished planning out my edits, but I think I'm almost there. Like, I don't think there's really anything that much more substantial to report. I've gone through all my notes that I took before doing that read through and while doing that read through, and like applied them to my evolving outline. There are still a few things that I'm mulling over. I've kind of gotten on a roll writing these practice chapters for Godship. It's kind of taken over and consumed my whole brain. My goal was to kickstart the voice so that the voice would just kind of start running in my head, writing itself. That has definitely worked. I've written like 2,000 words of the first chapter. I will probably just work on this until I run out of steam with it, and then my Saltburn edits. I'm just having a lot of fun with this right now, and it's just something that I like really wanted to work on. And I've been wanting to do since I first got the idea, and I'm actually really pleased with the little details that have cropped up through writing it. You know, that's something that I always, when I'm writing like realistic fiction, you know, I know will happen. I'm like, I don't have to plan all the little details in advance. They'll appear while I draft. But I guess with fantasy, sometimes it can be a bit amorphous, you know, details of the world that you know generally, but maybe haven't figured out the little specifics. There's like a bit more of a fear in my mind. What if those details don't fit into place while drafting? But so many cool little details have cropped up that I'm really pleased with just through writing these first few chapters, and I feel like I've learned a lot about the world and the character and solidified some stuff that was kind of amorphous in my brain. So kind of my goal, and then after that I'll probably just jump back into Saltbirds. I do have some other things that I need to attend to at a certain point. I have a short story from Paradolia that I need to edit. Actually, the last short story that still has issues, Melting Point, it's still a hot mess, and I told my agent months ago that I was gonna finally edit it, and I have not done that yet. But it's not like on any specific deadline. It's just one of those things that it's like I should do that sooner rather than later. I think those are kind of the main things I have on the plate right now. Big draft of Saltbirds that I'm about to go into, these opening chapters of Godship that I'm really having fun with, and then fixing Melting Point. Those are kind of all the things that I'm looking at in the near future. None of it is really that pressing. I mean, there's no rush on any of it. Really, the only thing that there's any kind of rush on is the Melting Point draft, and even then, like, it's not like I need that done by the end of the week. It's just kind of like look towards it in the nearish future. So that's kind of what's going on. I'm gonna wrap it up here, and now I have to go back to work for the day. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!